Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Hey, Sam, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Don.
Yeah. I'm kind of a little curious to see where this conversation goes. I have a very strange but a very cool relationship with Utahians. I don't even know if that's the right word.
Yeah,
but
Utahns.
Utahs.
Well, actually, some of us we call ourselves Utards. I guess
Utards. Nice.
Yeah, Utahns.
So every time I get to talk to someone who's from Utah, I kind of get a little excited. Because it tends to end up being a really cool conversation or just an experience. So, Sam, what are you currently doing? Where are you? What are you working on,
Okay, so right now I'm a student.
Mm-hmm.
I go to school at Utah Valley University, which is about an hour drive south of Salt Lake City. And right now I'm just finishing up the semester. And in my free time, I do, illustrations and artwork, and I just am trying to get better. Right now, I am studying graphic design, but right now, on the side, I'm doing a digital painting, and it's actually a digital portrait of Angelina Jolie, and I'll post that in a few days when I'm finished. But it's just kind of a photorealistic digital painting to build up my skills.
Nice. Do you find it difficult to do portraits of people like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, celebrities like Angelina Jolie, she's very recognizable. And so when you're doing a portrait, you have to be very tight in your technique because you have to nail everything for it to be recognizable. I mean, even if you're doing caricatures, you have to, if you're exaggerating features. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like actually a lot of the stuff that I've drawn over the years is more portraiture, portraits. And so actually I'm more comfortable maybe doing portraits than some other people who prefer doing landscapes or a number of different things.
Why do you, I've always heard that artists, sometimes they'll feel like, hey, I can draw anything. And then when it comes to doing a portrait, then they get a little nervous, right? And they're like, well, I can draw anything but a person's face. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, kind of like what I was saying before. I mean, I know a landscape artist. Actually, I know a couple of landscape artists. And, when you do a landscape, it's going to still look like, a mountain range or, the ocean if you don't, put the rock or the tree right in the exact place as your reference. But when you're doing a portrait, you have to make sure that, the eye is, exactly how that person looks. And so I think there's a part too of, how you relate with people. You have to be, I think, obviously I work from photos, but also like if you're in a studio class and someone is actually a model for you, you have to have, I think, a certain level of, you have to relate to people, you have to be personable. And so I just think it takes maybe a different personality, and different interests. And I've just, over the years, I enjoy drawing people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you were drawing somebody and they came up to you and said, that don't look like me. How would that make you feel?
Well, you have to have a tough skin. So actually, I've done caricatures before.
You
I did,
have, huh?
yeah. So I did. I mean, not a ton, but like I had a little bit of a commission. I did caricatures at a wedding before,
Nice, nice.
and so people come to the reception, and obviously they're there to see the bride and groom. But then on the side, we were people could line up and get their caricatures drawn, and I was with my buddy, and yeah, there were definitely some drawings that did not look exactly like the person, um, and with cartoons though, the nice thing is they kind of expect it doesn't have to look exactly like
Hmm.
that person, but you have to pick certain characteristics on a person's face, and maybe exaggerate them, and most people were actually pretty nice. But yeah, if it doesn't look exactly like the person, then you can just say something like, well, that's my own artistic expression of how I think it look.
So you can, learn how to BS it with a smile.
Exactly.
Ding. um, yeah, it was always strange. I used to do caricatures back in the day. I still do them actually, events here and there. About once a year, I'll do a charity event where I'll do caricatures at. Um, it was always kind of funny, like when you're sitting in a chair doing caricatures. And I remember being 16, years old, sitting there at an amusement park doing caricatures, and it was just always kind of funny when the beautiful hot women would come up to you and say, "Do me next, do me next." I'm like, oh, what? Stay focused, stay focused.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, right.
uh, you know, the reason why I wanted to I asked you that question about how do you feel when people do that is I was getting a vibe from you, a vibe that sure you're young in your career, in your path, but you have a confidence about you, which is very interesting. And so I asked that question because one thing that um, I think why a lot of people struggle with portraiture is because there's a truth in it that if they don't do it quote unquote right, the person has the ability to express their disappointment. Where anything else, you could draw a bird, a landscape, you could draw something out of your imagination, any and everything else can't tell you if they're happy or not about it. And I think that terrifies the artist. And then all of a sudden, then they get this they start cramping up, and because of this fear. Um, and yet, when you were talking, I felt like you had this interesting level of confidence, and so I asked you that, and then it's kind of funny that you brought up the caricature thing, because I think caricatures is a great way to actually learn how to get past that fear, even though you're under the safety of, hey, it's a caricature, it's not a portrait. um, so that's cool. I was looking at some of your work, and I saw that you were doing a whole bunch of different kinds of things, but I was actually surprised that it was your portraitures that I actually thought uh, were your high art.
Yeah,
Like it,
like more gallery fine art type of thing.
yeah. It was within it. You had a certain confidence in the work itself, and I was like, wow, that's really really cool. Yeah, that's really cool. So so you're at university. Are you just starting, in the middle, at the end? Like, where are you at that?
I am moving very slowly. So, my first year at school was actually, let's see, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And, with how life happens, I've had to work. I was a cook for, 3 or 4 years. And then I've also done customer service. And I'm always, painting and drawing on the side. And I just decided, I need to get a degree. And I'm actually just finishing up with an associate's degree in graphic design. And then I want to get a bachelor's degree in a bachelor of science in art and design. And so
Mm-hmm.
right now I'm about a junior.
Okay.
but I still have to, I still take generals. So I'm also in like a writing class and a geology class. But I'm also in an art history class.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and actually, I love art history. It's a lot of work, but I'm learning a lot. And kind of wanting to know what direction I want to go. I mean, for a long time, I thought, oh, I could just be, because there's a lot of artists who do not go to school and then become professional artists, or if they do go to school, they get a degree in something that is not art related. And I actually thought that maybe I'd do that for a long time, but I just found that it was, I need to get the degree because all the jobs I was looking at, they kind of required it. But that doesn't mean, I couldn't make it without one, because I've known, and for a long time I wanted to get into the entertainment industry, and that's kind of still the direction I want to go. Maybe doing animation, doing cartoons, like character development, or some conceptual work. Maybe do storyboards or comic book artwork. A lot of that fascinates me, and I do actually know a lot of people who are in the industry doing that stuff who did not get a college degree. But just looking at my life, I just felt like it's something that I want to do. And also taking these classes, I've gotten better. I've learned more technique. I've learned like in art history, maybe I'm not drawing, but I'm learning the history of linear perspective, and when was these terms like chiaroscuro or contrapposto, and what these mean. And they've really helped me when I actually start drawing. So yeah, I think an education is definitely helpful in that sense.
That's awesome, man. Are there any artists in the area that you would like to maybe do an apprenticeship with at some point?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, my professors, I mean, right now, so this upcoming summer, I'm going to be looking for work. I'm going to probably be like looking for a design position, or like being a production artist. And that style of work is a little bit different than, entertainment or maybe gallery artwork or illustration. But I would love to study under, maybe my professor, Kent Christensen. And he actually lived in Manhattan for a couple decades, and was an artist there. He actually is a gallery artist. He does a lot of he does like still lifes of candy and ice cream and chocolate cake and that type of stuff. That's like the subject matter he mostly paints. But it's a lot of fun. And I don't know if you know Utah very well, but I live in Salt Lake Valley.
Okay.
And he lives up in Sundance. And so I don't know if you know anything about Sundance. It's the nice area. It's right up in the mountains. It's where
where the sun dances.
Yeah. There's a film festival there every year.
Is that where? Oh, really? That's it. Okay.
Where Robert Redford lives.
Robert
Redford kind of created the whole, Sundance
film festival. Yeah.
And, there's good skiing up there, and I don't ski that often, but yeah. So it'd be good to go up to Sundance every day and paint with him.
That would be cool. I'll tell you, man. I'd encourage you to do that and make that happen, and be very deliberate about it, because every great artist knows that you can go to college and get a degree, but at some point, if ever given the opportunity, they'll tell you to do the apprenticeship, because in that, it'll allow you to really focus and develop a skill very, very quickly. Where in colleges, you have so many different teachers, and one might say this, another says that, and it's just a lot of bits and pieces. But in an apprenticeship, it's very intense, very focused, and there's a consistency to it in a relationship that you're building, that facilitates the kind of growth necessary for artists to ultimately thrive. And then what you also learn is the real world reality and practice of things versus theories. So I totally would encourage you to do that, if at all possible. I'd also encourage you, if you can, if you have time to do it, before leaving, take one or two business classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's one thing often never taught in art schools is marketing, uh, accounting. Basically contract development, just simple like everyday business things. And the reality is, most artists will ultimately become a freelancer where they're running a business. So if you can take a class on that, I totally would encourage you to do that. And
Yeah, no, of course. And I plan to. I mean, I've about 2 years left actually
mm,
for my education, just the way
hmm
it's shaking out, and but I want to work, and so we'll see.
yep, yep.
But yeah, of course, take marketing classes, and business classes, personal finance. I don't know if there's a personal finance class, but I definitely think that stuff is very important.
A great personal finance one is it's not in the university, but it's called Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's an incredible class. When I took it years ago, it was I think it was like $53 or whatever, and it was like maybe like a 2 month thing. Um, but it was really really incredible, really incredible. So
Yeah, I occasionally listen to Dave Ramsey on the radio.
yeah, okay, yeah, very cool then. So yeah, man. Like now, you were saying you'd like to get into animation or character design. Is there a place in Utah that does that kind of work, or would you have to then move out of Utah and go go somewhere else like California or something?
Yeah, I'd probably have to go to SoCal, Los Angeles area. But the
Okay.
truth is, it's actually not that far from Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
About a 12-hour drive, or it's actually a 1 hour flight. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I know a lot of people who, kind of jump back between the two markets. But yeah, I'd probably go into Hollywood, or I know Pixar is actually in Emeryville, which is the Bay Area. But that whole area definitely is where I may end up. I do know there are. I don't know the names, but I know that there are some companies here in Utah for video games, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't play a lot of video games, so I couldn't tell you which companies are here and which ones aren't. But yeah, a lot of my professors actually, I know um, one of the faculties for the illustration department at UVU. I haven't actually had him yet, but Howard Fulmer, he does work at Disney, and we've had people come in who have worked on like the Jungle Book, or have worked on Pixar projects. I've also met people who've worked at Universal Studios, worked on Kung Fu Panda or whatever. And so yeah, I mean, I think I have to work hard, definitely, but that's something I could potentially see in the next 10 years if I work hard at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. The guy that your professor who you said that if you were going to do an apprenticeship with, you would like to do it with him. Is he a painter?
Yeah, he is. So that's the funny thing, is he doesn't necessarily do the same thing that I do, or that I'm looking into. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he does more gallery artwork. He did do illustration for a long time, like
Mm-hmm.
magazine covers, and I don't know if he ever was on like the New York Times or something, or the New Yorker, excuse me. But he may
Mm-hmm.
have gone on a couple magazine covers. But yeah, he does more oil paint, and that's primarily what he does.
And do you have any experience in that?
Oh yes, I do. I mean, that's the class I took with him. It was oil painting.
Okay, nice. And what did you feel about that?
Oh, I love it. I mean, I love definitely. I prefer. Well, I mean, I like oils and acrylics. Depends on what I'm doing. It seems like most of what I work with now is acrylic based paint.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't. I hardly ever work with watercolor, so I definitely like. oil and acrylic more than watercolor. And with oils, so I had another professor. His name's Chris Young. He paints hyperrealism, and they Kent Christensen, the guy who lives up in Sundance, and he does cake and ice cream and all that stuff. He has a very different style than Chris Young, because Chris Young does a style where he called glazing. So he builds up the painting. He puts on he does the underdrawing, and then he puts a thin layer of oil paint on, and then just lets it dry, and then paints on top of that. Where Kent Christensen, he does a lot more of I believe the term is impasto or impasto. So it's very thick paint. He builds it up as well, but you look at his painting, it's thicker, and a lot of it's more direct. And I like both styles, and as I'm learning, I'm kind of learning both styles of painting. But I think ultimately I actually would prefer learning more from Kent, just because his style, and part of it is to the subject matter. I think that can't be understated, even though obviously it's all about technique. There's something about his personality that I thought was a lot of fun, and I could be around, and inspired me. So
no, he's the one who does the glazing.
So no, Kent does more impasto.
Oh,
but
okay.
He does like the cake and candy.
Oh wow, really? So it's like that. Like the painting itself has texture, but but he's doing these still life paintings. That's interesting. I'd be really interested in seeing that work. Very cool. And it's interesting. I'd like to see where you go in 5 to 10 years from now, and to see how much of your time is spent doing gallery work versus commercial work. Be it making movies or graphic design or something along those lines.
Right.
And and it's strange, because I would say normally it'd be like the other way around. You tell an artist, hey, as you're trying to build a career as a gallery artist, go find a job, right? Doing whatever, graphics or whatever. And in some weird way, it's like I feel like I need to tell you the opposite. Like, while you go and pursue your graphics or your animation work, build your gallery work on the side. Like, and my best friend is in animation, and so I've watched him go through that career for the last 20 years. And
it's brutal.
Yeah, he's actually really good, and he's very good with his ability to like get things done. He loves the challenge of things, and he's extremely well organized with his time. Incredibly organized with his time. I remember in college, it would be like finals week, and everybody would be like stressing and cramming, and Dan would be going to bed at 9:30. Like, what? Like, because he just had this ability to know, okay, it's going to take me X amount of hours. I'm going to every day plug in 2 hours a night or 3 hours, or boom, boom, boom. And he was really, really good at just breaking it down in small little bits and executing them on a daily basis. And so he was just never stressed out about it. He was, where everybody's like cramming and pulling all-nighters, and he was just calm and cool.
Yeah.
And so, he's built a very nice career as an animator, and a few years ago he switched over to gaming.
Cool.
But a lot of animators, their work, they'll get hired for a project, and then when the project's done, then they're let go, until they're brought back maybe for another project. And so it's not like, for most people, it's not I have a job at a company, I'm going to be there for 20 years, and that kind of setting. You probably have more success in a graphic design firm that way, like an ad agency or something, because they're always having different clients and things. But but that's just something to be to go in with your eyes open on,
Yes.
and if you're good and you're reliable and people enjoy working with you, then you'll probably stay busy. So
Exactly.
yeah. Um. So where did the desire to create images and visual ideas come from, Sam?
Yeah. So here's my whole story. I'll try to be brief, but I mean, as most artists, I was always drawing. I was
Mm-hmm.
drawing as a little kid. The thing is, though, as I grew up, went through elementary school, high school, uh, it was something I was good at, something I was better at than most of my peers.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have. My mom is actually an art history major. My grandma got a degree in, I think, art history as well, and then uh, my great uncle was an artist. So I mean, there has been some support there for the arts in my life.
Nice.
With that being said, as well, when I was really young, I actually had some physical problems, and I think so. I actually had cancer, so I'm a
Mm.
cancer survivor, and uh, I actually had cancer in the back, and with multiple operations, basically I was unable to play a lot of sports. I
Okay.
was unable to, I'm healthy now. I went through the treatments and all of that, but I couldn't play football. I wasn't tall enough to play basketball, and so at a very young age, I kind of, art was a way to escape, or have an imagination was a way to escape, because I wasn't necessarily drawing. I was just interested in being creative, cartoons, or fantasy stuff, or science fiction type of things. And as I got older, I because I couldn't play sports, I was like, well, I'm good at art, so I'm going to really try to pursue this, and I'm going to put in my efforts into this, because you know just certain things happen in my life, and that's kind of where I'm going. But then it's this thing where you know life is a funny thing, and life is beautiful, and there's doctors kind of give life, and that's a very honorable career. But I also think that being an artist and the arts kind of give people a reason to live,
Hmm.
and there's something poetic about it. There's a lot of people who find comfort, in painting and drawing, even if they don't become, professional artists. It really is therapeutic. It can be an escape. But if you do commercial work as well, I mean, people do it because it's fun. It's
Well, I'm going to
it's
stop you there. It's not fun.
okay. It can be a lot of hard work.
A
It's
lot of people who are
a
in
lot of stress.
commercial work, they will suffer from two elements. Either they become alcoholics or become insomniacs because they can't sleep.
Actually,
Um, but
yeah. I mean,
but
exactly.
um, where interestingly in architecture, the number one element is that the architecture has, I think, the highest divorce rate of all industries
Okay.
because it takes so much time and energy and focus that most spouses begin to feel like the mistress, and the architecture becomes the spouse,
Mm,
and so it's just an interesting thing. Um,
yeah.
but in your point about the artists, I read somewhere, and I always thought this was cool, that as long as artists aren't living a foolish life, either insane sexual lives where they end up dying at 23 from syphilis or something,
Yeah.
or drug, down the drug route.
Right.
If they're not inside those vices that ultimately have consequences, um, oftentimes artists live very long. And one of the reasons is, like you're saying, is they get out of bed and look forward to doing something that stimulates, their body, their mind, their soul, they're contributing, they're producing, they're giving, and because it's a solo thing most of the time, it's something that they don't need someone else to motivate them to do, right? And and because they have something to get up and go do, that,
Right.
that's they can have a passion that that helps them guide into becoming very, very old. So that's really, really cool. So, um, when you were sick, if you don't mind, can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean that's my story. So of course.
Um, that's how old were you when that happened?
I was 7.
Holy
So
crud!
7 to 11 was kind of when so I went through chemotherapy treatments, and multiple operations. Uh, and
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it just kind of puts maybe life into perspective at a young age, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. I mean,
A little
obviously,
bit.
yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, it was when I say a little bit, I mean it's really what my parents went through as well, because
Hmm.
they obviously helped me, get through that point, and you know, when you're young, and as young as I was, I didn't necessarily know, the the financial situation of it all. I didn't really understand all of the drugs and the medical terms. I just
Hmm.
was doing it because it was like, well, I'm sick and I need to get better. But it definitely, I was in the hospital a lot, and it puts it into perspective. Like, I see all my peers and my friends, they're out playing and having fun,
Hmm.
and maybe I'm inside, having to look a little more inward, and
Yeah.
be more reflective. And I think that also led to, drawing. I remember staying inside and, obviously watching a lot of TV, but also, drawing a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
drawing cartoons or drawing, random things, and, just letting my imagination go. So I think, yeah, I mean, that was something I enjoyed when I was young. And I think it's motivated me as I've gotten older, because, I still get back pain, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't do certain things physically. And I just kind of think, well, what is, what is, what is it that I really want to do with my life? And, maybe, well, what I really want to do is, live a meaningful life. And I think what I can offer is the art, and hopefully my art makes people happy, or maybe somebody enjoys something that I create. And obviously I need to build up my technique to get better, but hopefully one day, I've, left this planet a little bit better than I found it.
Wow, man, that's incredible. Wow. I'm gonna walk down that path with you a little bit longer in this conversation because I think I want to explore that with you and just hear you articulate that um, because that's really it's interesting. I was commenting on your confidence earlier, and and now having this part of the story makes a little bit more sense. This energy that I feel from you. Um, because that's a huge dragon that you you end up slaying, as a little boy, and you weren't even a teenager at the time. So that's really, really incredible. I'm kind of curious when you were going through that time in your drawing.
Hmm.
What was there something that you drew specifically that you found every time you drew it or contemplated it or thought about it, you just went deeper in a quote unquote positive way, in an enriching way.
Yeah. Um, it's actually cartoons. There's a project I've been working on for years, and I, maybe haven't worked as hard on it over the years, but there's this little creation that my brother and I made up. It was called the Animal Justice Team. And so there's these
Nice.
animals. You have a justice fighting squirrel. Who,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually called him Ranger Coke. And then there was Rabbit Bo Babbit, and he has a gun that shoots out carrots, and we have all these characters, Penguin Lad, Chiseled Cheetah, Enrique the Elephant, and so I was always drawing these characters, and they'd go on like little stories to protect the planet, protect the world from Doctor Danger and his army of robots and stuff. So that's actually kind of a project that I've still been working on. I haven't posted, or shared a lot of it. But yeah, when I was a little kid, that was kind of my escape. I was kind of creating this, and I mean, as I describe it, it kind of sounds like maybe like a like maybe a Pixar or a Universal Studios animation type of a movie. But yeah, that's kind of the project that I would escape with. And that I mean, obviously I draw other things, like I'm actually a big basketball fan. I'm a big Utah Jazz fan, so and when I was a kid, it was Karl Malone and John Stockton were were playing for the Jazz, and so yeah, I draw pictures of them and pictures of Michael Jordan and things like Space Jam, and so the Looney Tunes as well. So
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe not fine art, but I think there's something to be said about cartoons and animation as well, because that brings joy to people, and I think that can be an art as well. So
indeed, man, indeed. That's my mind is racing with so many thoughts and ideas right now. So if I pause, I'm just trying to like quiet that and trying to decipher through all these thoughts that are flowing through my brain right now. But yeah, man, like that's beautiful. That's extremely powerful. I always love talking with people and finding out really what their young inspiration was. And I'll tell you a story about a buddy of mine named Kirill. He's from Bulgaria, and Kirill, he was he was an incredible artist. He still is. And he came to the United States, didn't speak any English. I think he had like $5 to his name. His dad did something, work somewhere, and in Bulgaria, his income for the month was like 75 US dollars. And so he ended up getting the scholarship, and he went to Savannah College of Art and Design. And when he went there, he thought, hey, I want to be a painter. I've always wanted to be a painter, but let me be practical. And so he took computer art. And he took computer art for 3 years. And then one day, we were introduced to a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And it's around maybe about 1999, yeah. Maybe about 2000, somewhere in there. And he was also reading a couple other books. One of them was The Millionaire's Mindset, along with the Robert Kiyosaki one. And it was a summer, and we could not find Kirill. We didn't know where the heck he was, right? For like a week. And he ended up locking himself in his room for a week and just coming up with this entire plan. And when he came out of his room, the rest of his life changed from that point on. And he became a freak. Like he became like a psycho freak about his vision. And what he said to us was, he stopped with the whole major on computer art and all that stuff. He said, when I was 12, I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to travel the world and paint, and I want to paint like old people and hands and their stories. And so he decided that he was going to go to Kenya for 40 days and be who he always wanted to be, which was this international artist. And it was crazy, man. He was so clear on it. Like you could ask him well, what do you need? And he would say, well, I need, $119.34 to acquire my brushes, and I would need $329.02 for my paints. And like, I mean, he had it literally down to the pennies, and he could tell you what he needed to execute this thing, right? And people laughed at him and stuff like that, but ultimately he did it. At the time I was dating this girl from Kenya, and so we helped. He went and stayed with her and her family and things, and so it was cool. But so he did that. He came back, and he was like, from that point on, he was almost like a god to everybody in Georgia. Um, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to my next trip to Turkey." And people came out of the woodwork and prepaid for paintings he didn't even like he didn't even create. And so his next trip, he went with tens of thousands of dollars in his pocket, right? um to go, and so he went to Turkey, and he stayed at one of our friends grandmother's houses, and he just painted. um that was like 20 years ago. And from there, he ended up creating this little empire. Like, before he even finished college, he was like bringing in tens of thousands of dollars a month in art sales and things. But it was because he just came back in line with what his true mission in life was, and he would not deviate from it, right? Um, and I'm telling you that story, hopefully to inspire you,
Yeah.
because I truly feel that out of your ashes, in that time, there was a moment of magic. And you're saying, hey man, it was in my art. And more specifically, in this cartooning, right? And and so I want to honor you in that, and just take a moment to encourage you. And and what encouragement means, just to be very clear, it's not, for me, encouragement is not, hey, I want you to feel fuzzy and good inside. Okay. When I look at the word encourage, it means to put courage inside of something, right? So
Yeah, I like that.
it's courage. And courage, what courage is it's not the absence of fear. It's when there is fear, you have courage to move through the fear. And so that's what the technology of an encourager is. And what I want to encourage you to do is to be 100% committed to that. I don't want to say that little boy, because you weren't a little boy. I mean, and you're not a survivor. Like, it was something, that spirit that was in the midst of that chaos, that ultimately won. And in that, there was a voice, there was a cause that was put in you. And someone may come and say, well, it's just cartoons. Why don't you come and be a fine art painter? Because that's more respectable, or that's more blah, 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 right? I remember having an art teacher telling my friend who loved comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Loved comics. She literally said to him, comics are not an art form. I remember being in like high school wanting to throw my desk at her, right? Like, and with him, he suffered from I can't say the word, but cystic fibrosis or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So in his mind, and in all of our minds, we were expecting Brad to die like any week, like we all lived around him. And so for him to fall in love with this thing, strangely, 20 years later, he's still alive. Like, we all found him on Facebook, and the first question anyone asks him is, dude, you're still alive, right? It's so horrible. But
Yeah. You survived it. You survived that teacher.
yeah, um, but he's still obsessed with his comics, and it's his thing. And so, man, I just want to encourage you so much to run with that thing, and don't let it just be this idea that you had, but like really, really run with it, because you're 100% right. The story of your characters falls right in line with Chippendale, the chipmunks, like all of those great old Disney animations. It's it comes from the same cloth, you know. And what's more important about it is you're not copying something. This thing was part of your salvation story and your resurrection story. You know, the phoenix from the ashes story. And so there's a magic in it. There's a power in it, and that's I totally encourage you to run with that, man. Run with it.
Yeah, well, because you've probably seen my work. You probably haven't seen any of that stuff. So, I mean, right now it's kind of been on the back burner. And so I totally agree with you in the sense that I need to, because that is actually what I want to be doing. And I don't know why I'm not doing it. So, I,
Well, it's very simple why you're not doing it. You have a lot of voices in your head that are, you know, and that's the hard thing, you know. I mean, I struggle with it all the time. Meaning versus means, you know, like living a life of meaning versus having a life full of means. And if you can have the optimal place to be is to have a life that is saturated and full of meaning as well as means, right? Or someone might say, well, this is your dream and that's your, you know, that's beautiful, but then you have to be practical, you
yeah,
know. And that's a challenge. I heard once it said this way, that one of the struggles, of the frustrations of being a human being is that we're eternal or internal creatures trapped in time, you know. And it's just that struggle of how do you manage these two realities, this right brain, this left brain, you know. um but I'd encourage you, man, like, you know, be responsible, do your stuff, you know, take care of your life, but also understand that putting that thing on the back burner is a tremendous disservice to who you are and what you came from and the gift that's locked in that thing. And I encourage you, man, put that on the front burner. Let that thing fill the house. Anybody who comes and walks by your house, they can smell it cooking inside, you
yeah,
know.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it don't need to be simmering, you know, on simmer in the back burner. No.
yeah.
So I'm going to keep an eyeball on you, man. I want to see that. I want to see those characters. I want to see that design coming through. I'm actually, if you're okay with it, I'll talk to you about it. I would like to offer you a scholarship because um, to one of my trainings, if you're willing to do the work, I'll give you access to it because I don't for images to ultimately become great. I have a philosophy that it requires um, incredible skill in composition and design, not necessarily in how great you can render an eyeball or teeth or ears or whatever. Um, and on the flip side, it's not how great you can, you know, just have, like, you know, disorder and abstract chaos, you know, but abstract cartooning, impressionism, you know, or realism, whatever you want to call these different things, representational, whatever. What makes them great is when you are able to compose and design them. And and I would and I'd love to give you access to my course if you're willing to do it, so that you actually have a skill set that will elevate your cartoons, your characters to a whole nother level. And anyone who looks at it will just it'll just vibe and radiate with them because the way they're composed and designed outside of the concept, because you have the concept.
Yeah.
And we
I mean,
can talk about that.
yeah, I'm definitely interested. I don't want to close any doors. I mean, I want to learn more. I know you sent me like a book that you wrote. Still haven't, looked through all of it, but yeah, I'm definitely
Dare
interested.
you?
I'm sorry. It
Yeah.
was only like 2 days ago.
um that's fine, man. And we could talk. I don't want to talk about that stuff here on the podcast, but
Cool, cool.
but I want to enable you, um because I can see your story is very powerful, man, and I think it's very easy for a lot of people to believe in it. And and so, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, well, let's have a conversation about your characters. Um, if you saw this thing fleshed out, okay,
Hmm.
I'd like to have conversation with you on two fronts. What is the spirit that's in it that you want people to feel and resonate with? Okay, so oftentimes I'll look at it as a tuning fork. When you hit, when you hit the fork, it sends out a vibration, right? And then or if there's a vibration in the air, it's like it begins to match that vibration, right? So if you created this thing that was in you and it went out and there was a frequency or a vibration and energy and idea that was being sent out for people to become tuned into it, what would that be? Or what would that look like for you?
Yeah. Fun, but
Fun.
also
Awesome.
profound. Fun and profound. And what I mean by that, I feel like that's actually what a lot of these kid movies, and they're not necessarily kid movies, but these animated movies can be. Just for example, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Iron Giant, but that was
Mm-hmm.
actually one of my favorites
Mm.
growing up, and I feel like that one is one where it's a lot of fun and it's about a robot and all this, but then you look past the fact that it's just an animated movie and it's actually really profound as well. It tackles subject matter about caring for other people, and you know I don't know if it goes into necessarily guns, but this idea of war and
Mm-hmm.
aggression, because people don't understand what the robot is, and those types of things. And I think there's some deeper meanings there, and I think that's kind of what I would want to do. Same with what the animal justice team. That
Mm-hmm.
there's a on one level it's fun and a little slapstick, but on another level you look a little bit deeper, there's a moral there as well. So
And
it's
what is that
kind of
moral? What is it that you want people to mirror in their own life from those books or
yeah,
from those characters
yeah, from the characters.
or the overall story?
I think maybe a sense of belonging, because as
Mm.
I was as I'm writing these characters, a lot of them, I mean, obviously it's just a cartoon, so I try to keep it pretty simple. But a lot of them, I think, are these. The characters are very much, they kind of don't belong in the world that they're in, and
Mm-hmm.
then by the end, they kind of find a family, or they find a reason, to fight, for a certain cause, or be, with their friends, or with the that group of people. And so I think with any character development, there's that the hero's journey. But going along with the hero's journey, I think, is this idea of these main characters are confused or conflicted, and by the end, they have a sense of belonging through the events of the story.
And then the belonging is that something that's the result of their journey. Uh, but is that something that they they stumble upon and find, or is it something that they become very intentional about cultivating and protecting?
I would say the second, the later one,
Cool.
that they, because they're going to cultivate it. They kind of, what it is kind of an animal version of maybe like the Justice League. So you have the Justice League, you have all the superheroes, the
Mm-hmm.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and they create this league where they fight for justice. It's kind of the same thing, where then once they've created the league, now they're going out, and wherever there's problems in the world, they're gonna fight for the right cause. And so
Mm-hmm.
it becomes, to I guess these characters, in a comical way, but yes, to these characters, it becomes their whole their whole motivation is to, now go out and make the world a better place.
Nice, man. Nice. The reason why I was asking that is because if it's something that they find, then it's something that happened to them, even though it's a good thing that happens to them. Technically, one could say that they're still the victim of it, right? They're the victim of a good thing, um, versus from within making that conscious, deliberate choice to cultivate, to produce, to establish, and then again making that deliberate, conscious choice to then protect and to expand and nurture this thing. Um, and it's a very interesting thing because if the whole belonging thing, I think a lot of artists can relate to because for whatever reason, be it that we got sick or in my case, just I was raised in foster care, so it was like you're just bouncing around from families to families and homes to homes, and so it was and being Puerto Rican, my skin is a little bit darker and my hair is a lot darker than most of the people I was around my entire life. And so, and then being an artist and being sensitive to visuals, I never felt that I looked like I belonged anywhere. It was very strange when I was in my mid 20s. I flew to Puerto Rico and I got off the plane and there were all these people that looked like me for the first time in my life. It was the weirdest feeling. And what was strange is like me growing up, I had to learn to talk to protect myself because I didn't look like people. So I had to, learn how to talk intelligently and basically through conversation, protect myself, camouflage myself, right? So that people wouldn't look at the visual. But in Puerto Rico, it was totally opposite. I had to learn to shut up because as long as I didn't talk, because I didn't speak Spanish, so as long as I didn't talk, I could just pass on through, and so it was a very interesting experience. I went to Portugal last year, and it was it was like a very different experience because I couldn't speak the language and I didn't look like the people, so I was basically just exposed and naked and there was no belonging to them. And for me to basically survive in that, I had to find the Indians who I looked like, and because I spoke English, I could communicate with. And so it was a very interesting, experience to see these four different dynamics through my life. But so when you said belonging, family, it's actually one of the reasons why I created the podcast was out of this idea of bringing artists together and sharing our stories together so that we could have a sense of belonging, friendship and family, and at some point food.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I really resonate with this whole story. Very cool, man. Very cool. So now we talked about the more, let's say, esoteric side of it, the meaning behind what you want people to get out of. Now, in your, but how would you like to see the vehicle to get this message to people? Like, do you want it to be a video game? Do you want it to be an animated, series? Like, what kind of vehicles would you like to see it produced in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, for me to begin with, when I was a kid, I basically viewed it as basically like a Universal Studios animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Pixar, but I don't know. I feel like kind of my vision, it would follow along more of like what Universal Studios does, like the Shrek movies and the Kung Fu Panda, just stylistically and that type of thing. But I mean, I also love Pixar and what they do. And so that was kind of the first visual of it. As I've gotten older, I've thought, well, I'd love just doing like a comic book, do some comic strips of it as well. So, I mean, that's a vehicle. I mean, and with a lot of these things too, then they have a video game, but I never really viewed it as a video game, more of a comic book and more of a movie is kind of how I've viewed the animal justice team.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. And here's a crazy question for you.
Yeah.
How willing are you with the idea of letting someone else um, create the the images to actually do that part of the labor, the work, the art of it?
I mean, I'm open to it. I think definitely with anything, because I do know how some of these animation studios work.
Mm-hmm.
They get down with a bunch of different artists and they all create the concept of one character, and then they kind of pick and choose which design they like the best. I guess for me, I would just want to make sure that I would at least have the initial, some initial sketches and some initial character design for each of these characters,
Mm-hmm.
because there are certain things that, like, well, this one is, has this stereotype, or Penguin Lad has to have maybe a bow tie, or Rabbit Bo Babbit has to wear, camouflage because he's, a general in an army or whatever. And so,
Mm-hmm.
just like little things where I definitely would want to make sure that my input as far as, the characters, I would want to at least stay somewhat true to, my original vision. But I understand that then other artists come in and change things as well.
um, you got a little friend in the background there.
Yeah, sorry about the phone ringing in the back. I can't control who calls me.
um, that's all good. That's all good. Very cool, man. Very cool. So, I wanted to ask you that question just to allow yourself to go into that space, um, because there's a possibility that as you move this project forward, life may send open up some opportunities for you that uh, that can really put some serious power behind this vision.
Mm-hmm.
But are you willing? Are you willing to take that power with the constraints that usually come along with it, and just spending some time in that thought, like what, for the sake of the vision, what is it that's absolutely, what are your non-negotiables, and what are the things that you're willing to negotiate, and the question really comes back to ego, like where are you willing to lower the ego of it, right? for that we might call the muse, for the it's interesting. Years ago, I love etymology, and I was looking up the word museum because I saw, that's interesting. The word museum, it's muse, just like in music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the word museum comes from two words, and what it means is it's a museum as we think of it. It means a shrine to the muse, or to the muses.
Oh, so that's cool.
Right? Very, very different than a place where they store old stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and you think about that, like you created this offering to this God, in a sense. I don't want to call it a God like in a big G, but a small G. This being, this spirit, this thing that engages with us, or we engage with it, and but if the ego pops up, it's like, no, this is mine. I own this thing, Uh, it's probably the quickest way for us to kill that relationship with that muse, or that sense of, that,
Right.
or that message, Um, so that's why I asked you that question, just to kind of stimulate in your own mind, to help define and see your relationship clearer. What is it that you're really to protect, and to communicate and to guide, and what are the things that, if you're permitted to, you will, and but you don't necessarily have to, you know.
Mhm.
Cool, man. So, Sam, let me ask you an incredibly important question. What do you like to eat?
Yeah, no, that's the question actually I've been looking forward to the most. Well, no, seriously, because well, first off, I love Mexican food.
Okay.
But I love, here's the thing, I was a cook for like 3 or 4 years. And the
Oh,
funny thing
wow.
is, when I was younger, I actually didn't care much for food. Like when I was, sick and going through, cancer treatments, because a lot of those I actually couldn't eat a lot of foods because
Mm.
like certain drugs you can't eat, chocolate for example, or like processed foods. So I couldn't have like processed cheeses and meats or whatever. Um, but after I graduated high school, I just how life happens. I ended up getting a job at a Mexican restaurant. Um, Worked there for a year. It was Bajío Mexican Grill. It was actually up in Portland, Oregon. I actually lived up in Portland for about 6 years,
Oh,
and
wow. Nice.
and yeah, I mean burritos, quesadillas, sweet pork. I mean, dude, I love it all. And I just started trying everything on the menu because obviously I worked there. So, and one thing that they made a tomatillo sauce that was
Hmm.
so good, and I would never have tried a tomatillo sauce if I hadn't worked there. But I'm telling you, it's like that's the greatest thing on the planet. Get it with some nachos or whatever, and yeah, I love that. And then when I moved here to Utah, I actually got a job working at a brick oven pizza,
Okay.
which is it's a Italian place and pizza, and they make great calzones. And
Mm.
I would never have had their calzones if I hadn't worked there. So,
Now,
I
do you
mean,
know the
like,
connection between the calzone and the Mexican food is?
uh, they're both wrapped.
No.
Okay, so no, what
Uh,
is?
if you're in a Mexican restaurant, you never want to order a calzone
Okay.
because a calzone in Mexican Spanish is a dirty underwear.
Oh, it is. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah,
Can I get some calzones, please? What?
yeah. Um,
But anyways,
yeah, that's funny.
so what do you like in your calzones?
That's the thing. I mean, there's uh, some ricotta cheese with marinara, and I've had chicken with broccoli and lemon pepper, or
Mm.
ones with like pepperoni and you know mushrooms, olives, and sausage. I mean, there's just there's different combinations that work really well. I actually like salami with a nice pizza cheese blend, and I mean, yeah, all of those, all of
Wow,
those.
man. Wow. Wow. I'm kind of thinking like imagine just taking the ricotta base and the of the calzone and like the shape of the calzone, but everything else inside of it is just burrito or tacos or
Oh yeah,
whatever the other kinds
Mexican.
of foods. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mexican cuisine in there. Wow, that would be an incredible experience to devour. So now, when you were working in those restaurants, did you learn how to make those things?
Yeah, I mean, when you work in a restaurant, a lot of it is different than maybe cooking at home,
Yep.
because it's in a corporate kitchen. The prep, you like I would get there in the morning and I would cut 100 tomatoes or 100
Hmm.
onions, and then when you get the order, you just assemble it together and put
Sure.
it in the oven or whatever. So yeah, obviously I learned how to make it, but honestly, I don't cook a lot of those things on my own, which I should because I know how to. I don't. So
Wow.
yeah.
Uh, do any of your friends ask you to cook that stuff every once in a while?
No.
What?
Well, they should, but
They,
my usually when it's my friends, we just go out to eat.
okay.
So
Do you go to Italian places or Mexican places or somewhere else?
well, yeah. So yeah, Utah actually has a lot of good Mexican food. At least I think. I actually have a lot of friends that are Mexican, and they always will say, well, this isn't true Mexican food because
Yep.
you have to go to Mexico to get the true Mexican food. So I guess a lot of it's more.
It's like a Tex-Mex. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we'll go out and get Mexican food, or we'll go out and get Italian food. Yeah. So
That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, if you ever need to do something, you can always start like a video blog on Italian and Mexican cuisine local to Utah. That's awesome, man. Man, that's really cool. Very, very cool. And how long did you work in the restaurants?
So Bajío Mexican Grill, I was there for 1 year. And then Brick Oven Pizzeria, I was there for 3 years.
Okay, cool, man.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. And what do you do now?
Well, I'm a student. I'm actually currently unemployed.
Oh, okay.
Looking for work. So I was finishing up the semester, and I because I went to school for graphic design, I want to get a job in, the design field.
Sure.
And start out there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe there's a place you can like do restaurant work, do graphics for restaurants.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah.
There's always menus and all that kind of stuff. And very cool, man. Sam, if people wanted to find out your website or your blog or connect with you somehow, how would they do that?
Okay, so they can obviously look me up on social media. My name is Sambwinder. You can think everything comes up if you type in Sambwinder art. But also, you can email me at my Gmail. My Gmail is sambwinder@gmail.com. And that's B as in boy. I mean, I don't have an official website up yet. That's something I've been looking into. I mean, I've messed around with things. I do have a blog. If you want to look that up as well, it's samwinder.blogspot.com. But yeah, I mean, that's how people would find me right now.
Cool, man. And I'll take those links and put it in the show notes, and then they can click on it and head on over. Sam, it was awesome talking to you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Donna Ayers-Vorbach from New Jersey, Manasquan, Jersey Shore. And I've been working with Don Victor for 1.5 years, and I have to say my whole life has turned around as a professional artist under his tutelage. He's a master composer. Studying with Don Victor is like studying musical composition under Prince. Fabulous. My work has taken off to higher levels because after 35 years of struggling to understand what makes a great painting, Don Victor has finally opened up the secret box of his Academy of Composition to explain to me that design is king, and that that design begins in the invisible world in the very beginning to tell the story, and then you build upon it, and in the end you have an image that resonates and can go global. And without what Don Victor teaches you, you have just a mediocre piece that will appeal to maybe 1 or 2 people, maybe your family will like it, but it won't have the power of design that your work needs and deserves. Thank you, and please join us with DV. We've become a great family at the Academy of Composition. Thank you.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlining structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.